let's shift gears now, since it is the best month of the year going into heading into March Madness. We've got the editor and co-founder of Inside the Hall. It's Mr. Alex Bozich, covering all things Indiana
See ya.
Hoosiers.
Alex, how are you tonight? Thank you for hanging in here. We're running a little bit behind, but that's just part of it.
Hey, it's our show, Alex. It's our show. We can go wherever, however long we want, man. We're never behind. It is
I was
so
just
cool to have you
enjoying
with
listening
us.
to you guys talk high school basketball, so I could have listened to that for a while.
Yeah,
And Coach Hecklinski, I was just thinking about this when I was as you know, Pat, my mom's side of the family's from Anderson, so I grew up in New Albany, but I used to come up to Anderson when I was a kid and watch games at the Wigwam. And I remember 1996 actually going to watch Anderson at the Hall of Fame Classic, and he played Luke Recker at Newcastle.
Yeah.
Who was on that Anderson team?
Eric Bush was on that team. Tyson Jones, Dwayne Miller, Kenny Chamberlain. That's the year that. And this is a great deal, man. Luke Recker, hadn't played in Central Indiana, was up in DeKalb. They're leading by probably 7 or 8 with maybe 4 minutes left, and Luke's running down the floor. And I said, Luke, take another one, man. He comes down, and they got the lead. Cliff Hawkins is on the bench for DeKalb, and he just fires one up. We get the rebound. We go down. We score. Luke's right. I said, Luke, get another one, man. You got time to get another one up. He takes another one. He misses. We come down. Now it's like a 2-point game, and we end up winning. But Luke Record was just an outstanding player, man.
I just remember that day because I'd never been to Newcastle for a game, and I think I was 14 years old, and just looking up and seeing that place completely full. I don't know if it still gets like that for the Hall of Fame Classic, but that's one of those memories, like growing up in Indiana, going to a high school game that you don't ever forget.
It did when Romeo and company played over there.
Yeah.
That's probably the last time it was full is when Romeo was there for the Hall of Fame tournament too. Yeah, in the 70s it was full every night, and into the 80s when Alfred was there as well. But for you people at home, Alex's mom and uncle are Anderson people. Your mom, Carol, was a year younger than I was, and their mom, your grandmother, was a teacher there at Anderson High School, a home ec teacher, I believe, and my dad was too. So we were both, all three of us, we were kids of teachers growing up, and there were a bunch of us.
Yeah,
a bunch of us.
So listen, Alex, let's get right to the chase here, man. I use, won their last 3. They're in, they're not in a bad spot. 9-9, 18-11. Give me your thoughts on the Hoosiers now, man.
Well, if you would have asked me this 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would have told
you
the season's over. And now,
all of a sudden,
I mean, this team's got talent. They've always had talent, and I think they're playing with some desperation, maybe for the first time all season, and it's starting to show. And the schedule has eased up a little bit here lately. They had that 11-game stretch where it was just brutal. I believe winning that game at Michigan State may prove to be the thing that gets them in the tournament when it's all said and done. But they've really, I think a lot of it lately comes down to the rotation and the guys he's emphasizing to play more, like Anthony Leal, Trey Galloway, Luke Goody, those guys that are really about making winning basketball plays on a consistent basis. They've started to make threes at a little bit better clip, and overall, I mean, this is really the best stretch of basketball they've played all season after really a underwhelming, I would say, is the best way to put it. November, December, January, they've played much better here as of late. So I wouldn't want to play them in the tournament, that's for sure, if they get in.
So right now they're the last bracketology I looked at, they're on the 11 line as one of the last 4 in to play Oklahoma and Dayton to lead it off, but obviously that's subject to change.
Well, yeah, no, because they got to win. They have to win. I mean, they got to, maybe split at the end here and win a game or two in the tournament. But what's the story with Leo been? I mean, he was a very good high school player. He never got much clock, and now he's getting clock.
I never understood why he didn't get more clock because I watched him a lot in high school. because they played New Albany quite a bit. Got a chance to see him play. Got to see him play Romeo. Got to see him play, I think, against Trace Jackson Davis. He was always a good player, a good shooter. He got to Bloomington, obviously Archie Miller recruit, and he just never developed any confidence shooting the ball, which he still doesn't really shoot the ball, but he's figured out a way to impact games other ways of shooting. He's a really good defender, always makes the extra pass. He's the first guy on the ball when it's a loose ball on the floor. So he's just, the cliche glue guy, but I mean, I think he really fits that bill for this Indiana team. He just does all the little things that impact winning.
Well, we've been talking for 2 years now how Galloway was kind of the glue guy, and I think you put the two together at the same time out there, and they really help stabilize because, let's face it, they're not the strongest backcourt in the Big Ten. Maybe not even the best backcourt in town with Bloomington South and Bloomington North. You never know, but they make things happen. And they're making those big guys better right now, and I think the key to that is, can those big guys do what they're supposed to do, because they did not in January and early February. And
I think the other thing is,
I have no idea why.
Yeah, they've finally gone away from trying to play Renew and Ballo together all the time. They've kind of staggered those minutes, and I think that makes a big difference because they were so much easier to guard when they were playing those two together because they were clogging up the paint, and now they've got much better floor spacing out there with Goody playing more minutes, and Baco can knock down the three ball a little bit. So I think a little bit of it was the stubbornness of Mike Woodson kind of wanting to ride with that lineup with Ballo and Renew at all times, and he's gone away from that, and they've played much better as of late as a result.
And the word stubbornness being it could have been NIL related too, because you're going to bring a guy in and you're going to say, I'm giving you this amount of dollars, and you're expected to start. Now if they play the two guys and they're running high low, and there's always a helper in there because the other big is either at the high post, and there's always a helper. There's no lanes. Now, like you said, the floor spacing is so good. And I don't know. I mean, maybe you know this. Has Mike Woodson gone in and rescinded his offer to resign yet or what?
I don't think that's going to happen. I think, and I'm not sure it was actually his decision. I think that's the way it was presented, but it sure seemed to me that with the way that he didn't want to talk about it afterwards, I think it was a mutual parting of ways. And so in many ways, I think it took some pressure off this season for a lot of these players, and for Woodson, he can just kind of go out and try to win as many games as possible and not having this hang over his head. I mean, it really got to be, I'm not sure how closely you guys follow the team and watch the games and all that, but it really got to be a bit of an ugly situation there at times at Assembly Hall a couple of times this season. And you really hate to see that for a guy like Mike Woodson, who had such a storied career in Bloomington, longtime coach in the NBA. I think came back to Bloomington with intentions of getting this program back to, at least where they're competing for Big Ten titles every year. And they've had some up and down seasons, but when you've got your own fans chanting "Fire Mike Woodson" at one of their own, I just think long term that's not good for the health of the fan base or the program. And so I think it's best, obviously, that they part ways. But I think it'd be a great story if he can go out and make the tournament, win a couple games, go out on a high note, and then everyone's kind of feeling good about what getting to the tournament 3 or 4 years in Bloomington. That's not bad based on where they've been before he got there.
Well, let's jump forward now. You're there pretty much on a daily basis. What names are you hearing being thrown around? I mean, the name was always the Michigan coach. It was his job until he said no. And I listened to one of your podcasts with your dad, and between the two of you, like you said, it was May's job until he said no, thank you. All right. So now what? Who's number 2 and number 3 that they're looking at?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Scott Dolson, I think, is running a really buttoned up process, which I think it's the less information out there, the better, because I think the last thing you want in any coaching search is a bunch of rumors and guys talking about things. To me,
or Quinn Buckner hijacking the process.
No comment on that one. But the two The two names I think that you have to call first before you go anywhere else. Scott Drew at Baylor, obviously won a national championship. He's from the state of Indiana. Have no idea if he would leave, but I would make that call. And the other guy I like a lot is TJ Otzelberger at Iowa State, who took over that program, has got them, I think, ranked in the top 10, 15 this year. Just a high energy guy, plays an exciting brand of basketball. Those are the two names that I would look at first. No idea if either one of those guys would come. To me, I think it makes a lot of sense if you're a coach in the Big 12 to look at making a move to the Big 10, because look at the health of the conferences. The Big 10 and the SEC are where all the money is right now and where the money is going to be in the future. If I'm a coach in the ACC or the Big 12 and I have a chance to go to a program like Indiana that's going to commit the resources that they are to their basketball program, I'm looking at that as an opportunity to really win big. So those are the leagues I think where you could see a coach make a move. I don't necessarily see, like with Dusty May, he's already got it going at Michigan. He's making $4.75 million now. Not the pressure that there's going to ever be at Indiana. He's proven he can come in and get it done in 1 year with the portal. So I think that was a dream, obviously, for a lot of Indiana fans to kind of see him come home. But from his standpoint, he's got his own thing going there at Michigan, and it's also hard to leave after just 1 year within the same conference. So I don't think it make a ton of sense for that.
Well, yeah, but so what about Chris Beard? I mean, does he have too much baggage on his scenario that went down at Texas? Because when you're talking about a flat-out coach who can coach, then Chris Beard's got to be right up there, right?
Now, Chris Beard's right up there with anybody. I mean, not just for looking at – I'm talking about one of the best coaches in college basketball,
Exactly.
period. He's up there. I don't know – from everything I've heard, and this is just kind of what I've heard, I think he'd be a little bit further down the list because of what you mentioned, the issues at Texas. I'm not exactly sure what went on. Obviously, there's police reports, and I think things ended up getting dismissed. But he has turned things around very quickly at Ole Miss. He's been to a national championship game at Texas Tech, and as you said, Coach, you know, in terms of just guys that can flat out coach, I don't know if you can name 5 or 7 in the country better than Chris Beard. So, if I'm Indiana, I'm vetting him and I'm determining whether or not I feel comfortable bringing in a coach with whatever went down. Again, none of us were there. We don't know exactly what happened, but I think it's important to kind of know what happened and figure out if that's something that you want to be associated with. But it's hard to say whether or not, you know, the president Pam Witten and Scott Dolson is that something they want to do.
Well, one of the other coaches that we saw here in just the last couple of weeks at the Assembly Hall was Nick Cronin, UCLA. And some of the things he's mentioned here in the last couple post-game press conferences has not been real friendly for his own, you know, people there at UCLA. He's hadn't had, you know, he's thrown his own players under the bus. You know, especially at the Minnesota game. You know, is he doing that to set himself up to? Who knows? And because things aren't really very good at Pauley Pavilion. I think I listened to one of your podcasts. You said you and your dad Rick mentioned that they're only getting half a crowd, like 50% capacity at Pauley, and it's not a very big place as it is. So I don't think he's happy, and he's made a lot of comments about playing in the Big Ten on the West Coast and having to go east. I remember he made a comment where he said, "I've seen the Statue of Liberty more times than I've seen the Golden Gate Bridge here recently." So just to show that he's been on the wrong side of the country, and here's UCLA in the Big Ten.
He definitely strikes me as a guy that's either trying to get something else from UCLA more than what he's already has there. Maybe it's more resources, but he almost makes it come off like he's been underappreciated there. He even talked about at the press conference after the IU game when they beat IU in Bloomington, some of the fan base not liking him. You don't really hear a coach come out and make those kind of comments unless they have some kind of motive behind them.
Right.
The thing with him, his buyout is, I believe, right now it's $16 million, and after April 1st, it's 10. That's unheard of for a basketball buyout, for somebody to pay that much for a coach. You see it maybe in football, but you don't see that in college basketball. So unless UCLA was willing to negotiate on that, I just don't see that as being possible for Indiana to go out and pay 10 or 16 million to pry him away from UCLA on top of what they'd have to pay for his salary. he's a good coach. The one thing about him is his style of play, somewhat similar to what we've seen in the last two coaching regimes. I think the one thing Indiana's probably going to try to go get a coach who's a little bit more offensive oriented in terms of the style of play, shooting more threes. People, a lot of IU fans that I've talked to, at least, are tired of seeing these low volume 3-point shooting teams that are more trying to win with defense first. I think they're going to try to get somebody that has a little offensive firepower. I'm not sure that Nick Cronin's that guy. Yep.
All right, well, let's look at this week. Tomorrow night, they've got their second game out west. They've got Oregon tomorrow night, and then they finish up at home against Ohio State. Do they have to win both those games to get in the tournament?
I don't think they have to win both. I think if they win one of the two, if they win Oregon, I think they're in regardless of what happens the rest of the way. That'd be obviously a resume win.
That's a big win.
If they can beat Ohio State, I think they're really, really good shape. I mean, at that point, they'd be 500 in the Big Ten. Maybe they have to win a game in Indianapolis, but even some of the more, I think Scott, your producer, mentioned the bracketology. I've seen a couple today where they actually were above that last four in line where they avoided Dayton altogether. So the thing is that this bubble's so. I mean, we say this every year, right? This is, I guess, the argument for not expanding the tournament any further. The bubble's weak, but a lot of these teams over the weekend stubbed their toe against, Arkansas goes to South Carolina, gets embarrassed. I know Oklahoma lost. Nebraska lost at home. I believe it was to Minnesota. Indiana goes on the road to Washington, not a very good team, but they beat them handily. They've maybe surpassed a couple of these other teams that are on the bubble. So I think if they can just hold serve these next two games, go 1-1, maybe win a game in the Big Ten tournament, I think they're going to be in. Whether they go to Dayton or not is anybody's guess. We don't know exactly what the committee is going to value, but that game on Saturday against Ohio State could end up being more important for the Buckeyes than it is for the Hoosiers, depending on what happens in the Oregon game, because Ohio State's already lost at home to Indiana. They're on the bubble as well.
I will say the bracketology I did look at was published. He published it Friday, so
okay.
We had an entire weekend of games that went down. So that's a good point.
I saw Jerry Palm, I think, over on CBS, and the guys that, I don't know if you've heard of Delphi Bracketology, which is the group of high school kids in Delphi, Indiana, that have done a really good job with bracketology. They actually moved Indiana up as well out of that last four in. So again, these bubble teams, they're all mediocre. So the teams around Indiana are going to take more losses between now and the tournament. So if Indiana can just find a way to win a couple more games, I think they're going to be safely in, as crazy as that sounds. I mean, when they were in that streak of, I think it was 3-8 and over 11 games, everyone thought they were done. And here they are still with the pulse and maybe a chance to get in the tournament.
I will say if IU loses tomorrow, then Saturday, Ohio State and IU is huge.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, IU can't lose both of those games. No. Hey, Alex, did you go to New Albany High School?
I did. I was a junior the first year that Coach Shannon got there.
So what about the great Jimmy Shannon, man, going into the Hall of Fame, huh?
I love him. He was, during the Romeo recruitment, I joked that I was at more New Albany games that season than I was IU games, because that was the story for Indiana basketball, was recruiting Romeo. So I was over there probably 15 games that year. And, I've known Coach Shannon for such a long time, but I was so happy to see that news. He deserves it. He did such a great job for so many years at New Albany. And people like to talk about that Romeo team winning the state title, but he had a lot of teams at New Albany where he coached them up, didn't have maybe the best talent in the world, won a lot of sectional titles, got, to regionals, semi-states, and just a great, a good coach, but a better person. And he's a guy that I could call right now and he'd pick up the phone, talk basketball if I wanted to. And I know he's still working at New Albany. I think he helps out over at Charlestown High School. One of his former players is the coach at Charleston High School, and he helps out coaching there. And I think they had actually a celebration last weekend at New Albany. A bunch of former players coming back and got a chance to celebrate him. So I love Coach Shannon, just a great guy.
Alex, tell everybody how we can listen to your podcasts, Inside the Hall, and also the podcast. You have a podcast on the Brink. Tell us a little bit about them real quick, and we'll let you go home.
Yeah, Inside the Hall, I've started that in 2007, been doing it full time since 2012. And, you can just go to insidethehall.com, and I'm on all the social media platforms as well. And then the podcast is, as you mentioned, Podcast on the Brink. Just search for it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I usually do one episode a week, and we talk. Right now, it's a lot of coaching search talk, but also talk just some, game breakdowns, different things like that. I like to try to get guests on from different schools and just talk different perspectives. And, like to have my dad on too, because, he's a, longtime sports writer, Hall of Famer, and learned a lot from him. So it's fun to have a chance to talk to him as well.
Exactly. Hey, thanks a lot for coming on with us tonight. Appreciate it. And we'll keep track of your podcast, and we'll give us a lot of good information here about IU basketball here in this last week of the regular season. So
Appreciate it.
Tell your mother we said hello.
Will do. I'm sure she's listening right now. So thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Alex, man. Be cool,
All right.
man.
All right.
Take care. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that's the great Alex Bozich. He knows basketball inside and out, man.
He's grown up with it.